Hey everybody, thank you for joining us again. I'm going to make this a quick intro. I just want to give a big thank you to Espacio 1839 for allowing us to do this podcast inside of their space. Don't forget to visit espacio1839.com. Follow them on Instagram, and also come visit them this Friday. Looks like they have a show opening up this Friday. There's new artwork going up, so come out to Espacio 1839. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button because it means a lot to this channel. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram too at DANCNG SOBR. This week we have artist and educator Salvador de la Torre. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the DANCNG SOBR podcast. As we get this new year started, we have a very special guest today like we do every week. And this week's guest is artist, educator, Salvador de la Torre.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It is our pleasure. First time I saw you was when you and I, first time that we met.
Yeah.
Was when you and I both spoke at Mario's class.
Right,
at UCLA.
Yeah. When was that? Like 2018?
Probably, I don't remember dates. I'm really bad at that. But yeah, it was really cool. I mean, to listen to you talk about your work, and I'm still kind of new to art. I still, I don't know a lot. And I remember that when I listened to you speak about the art that you did, I was kind of blown away by how you turned something every day into art. But we'll get into that in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a ritual for sure.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit about, Salvador de la Torre. And let's learn a few things about you. And so let's start with where you were born and la vida.
Yeah. So I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco. And when I was 5, my parents, we successfully got our green cards to migrate officially to the U.S. and we landed in Laredo in Texas, like a border city. And I say more officially because my parents' trajectory of migrating started in the 70s. Because I'm their 6th child. So they had been kind of going back and forth from the U.S. and Mexico since the 70s.
Wow.
And
what kind of work did they do?
So they were just in the 70s and 80s, they did a lot of farm working, migrant work. So just moving from place to place, according to the seasons. And they lived in Santana a lot. They lived in LA, and then in more northern California in a city called Dixon.
Familiar.
Yeah. Just a lot of cities too, where there was connections from our pueblo in Jalisco, where they had just parientes or other folks that are from there. Just
what was the name of that little pueblo?
So the pueblo is called Acatic. Okay. So I was born in Guadalajara because there was no hospitals in the small pueblo, and my mom would go to the city to give birth to us.
Similar with me. I was born outside of Guadalajara too.
Oh, really?
In a small town called Pihuamo. But I was born at the ranch.
Yeah.
And then didn't come and register my name till after. She didn't go into the city till after I was born.
Right.
But yeah, I was born on a dirt floor.
Damn. Well, I was lucky that my mom was she got to she had me the way she planned in the hospital. But with my sister that's just 2 years older, they were about to get into the highway, and my mom had to she's nah.
Nope, we're not making it.
Yeah, and they just had to turn around and my sister was born in a house in our town. Yeah. So.
What year was that?
So my sister 87 and I was born 89.
Okay.
And we moved to Laredo in 1994. And that's where I started just kindergarten, I'd done like a little bit of like kindergarten already in Mexico, and then transition into schooling in Texas, and that's where I did like schooling all the way till high school. And and then I for school, for like college, which I knew always, like the second I had any grasp of like what life was, it was like you had to go to school.
System, yeah.
Yeah, like it was like really deeply ingrained, like that was the reason we moved to the U.S. was for like this American dream, and that I had to succeed in school to make my parents like journey and like sacrifice to leave their country like worth it. And so I always did like really, really good at school. I would always get like A's and B's, and was in AP classes. And I started taking like art classes when I was like in 7th grade. That's like the first time that I was officially able to take like an art class. And then I got addicted and just never stopped. Like, and I now teach art. Like, I've always been in some type of like art.
What did
classroom.
You start with?
So just drawing, like a lot of other folks that do art, like the foundation. Drawing, painting, collage, like all like 2D. I never ever really did 3D work until a little bit in college and stuff. But yeah, my older siblings, I said earlier that I'm one of 7 actually. I'm number 6, and they all also like do a lot of art. So I grew up watching like my older sister and older brother draw a whole bunch. And so like being like a younger sibling, I was like, oh, like I thought they were so cool. Like they were like the coolest people ever, and I wanted to be like them. So I figured out too that I could like draw like I would even before going into like art classes in school. I like would have my books that I would buy from like the Scholastic Book Fair, and I would try to
draw
like
a horse.
No, not even that. Like I don't know that I ever saw those, but I got I would just try to replicate like I don't know, Rugrats characters and like just whatever characters I would see, Mickey Mouse, whatever, in books. I would just try to draw them, like freehand them myself. And like my mom was like, oh, like you can draw too. And so that's like kind of just, I just kept at it.
So were your mom and dad like, we're raising a family of artists?
Yeah. They
was that difficult for them to?
Super. It's still difficult for them, honestly.
Yeah.
Because like this whole a dream of like us being in the U.S. was for to us to have like economic prosperity, and they were sad and like disappointed, especially because I had such good grades that I could like study anything I wanted, and that I chose art. They were sad, but like they like ultimately they told me that it was my life, and like honestly, like to them it was like it's a degree. It doesn't even matter what it's in. You're going to college. Yeah. Like you're doing that American thing, you know. So they were like, yeah, they were still proud of me.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And how was your transition from like high school to college art?
So yeah, like in high school I went to like a art magnet program, and so I had already been like developing like portfolios and stuff since 8th grade.
Oh wow! So you didn't just have your regular art. You had some advanced drawing classes in high school. Yeah.
Like it was like a group of like, I don't know, maybe 15 students that we took this class like every semester, like different, like it was like different levels, but all kind of just painting and drawing, and ultimately like to build the portfolio, like an AP portfolio. So I had been working like building like bodies of work since I was like really young, but yeah, everything kind of just painting, drawing, like mixed media stuff. Like I would love to like in high school do like, I don't know, just get watercolor and like mix it with like soap and like crayon wax and stuff. Like the
Just to
teacher would
see
let
what
us
happens,
just
yeah.
like, I just wanted to like just mess with materials and just have fun too. But yeah, and then I transitioned into going to college, and that was really rough, honestly.
Wait, did you in high school do anything like comics or anything like that, or because there's so much like storytelling in your work?
Oh yeah.
Is that something that like caught on early?
No, I didn't really see, like, I didn't connect. That was, I feel like that's like alchemy, what I'm like, what I'm doing now, and kind of what started was that project that you heard me talk about in UCLA, like connecting like my everyday life and the stories that I know from my family, and considering that art, and the way that I live my art and my life to be art, like I didn't really make that connection until after that project. So when I was younger, like it was very separate for me. Like it was just like art was separate from life. And you had to have like, I don't know, some level of understanding of like the elements and the principles of art. And it was just like very much like that. Like I like to experiment, like I mentioned earlier, but all just like within like it's still within like, I don't know, like drawing, painting, very traditional kind of ways of thinking of art, especially like in schools.
So what was it that like helped you make a switch or?
Yeah. Well, I think what helped me was that I just learned, like I had art known already since like undergrad, like taking art history classes of like performance artists. But I honestly at the time, like all the people that I learned about were like white, hetero, like cis people, like making performance art. And I always thought it was like kind of strange. Like I was like, what the heck are these people up to?
Wait, why was it strange?
Yeah, I don't know. I remember just like thinking, like learning about some artists that walked, like, I don't know, like walked on a field.
Oh, I see. That was strange.
Yeah.
Like, why did they choose to do that?
Yeah, and like how is that art?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Okay.
Like
I thought you thought it was strange that they were white cis.
Oh, I mean that.
But it was, what they were doing is what was strange.
Like the actions.
Yeah,
I
when
thought,
you first start to realize, like, oh wow, that's.
Yeah, like the things that I was exposed to at school, like, were just seemed like very, very strange to me, and I couldn't connect, like my life to it, or like didn't like know really people that would make that type of work. Like I would just kind of read about them. They were like very far in the ether somewhere. And it was until like, when I started to experiment with like myself doing performance in undergrad, I mean, in at the end of graduate school, and of just like friends, like people, colleagues that were in school with me, other Latino like artists, like telling me like, oh, like you should look at work from like, I don't know, Guillermo Gomez Peña or like Ana Mendieta, a lot of just like Latinx artists or queer artists that were also working in performance, and like were doing these actions that I was more familiar with, and so then like that gave me like some agency to be able to think like I could do that, and I can make that type of work and do those actions and call them art too. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about like your high school life. What was that like? And what city was that in?
Laredo,
Texas.
So I was just I was a really serious like art student. Like I didn't take that like lightly, like my art academics. Like and I had this group of friends that were in those classes with me, since some of them I knew since 8th grade that we applied to the program together. And so we were like just like this group of people that loved art and like films and like anime and like just like just things that were not popular
The
at the
little art
time.
nerds, yeah.
Yeah, just like now like I teach high school and stuff, like all the kids that like they love anime. And
every kid.
And when I was like, we would get bullied for that as a kid, you know. Like, and then also like it's just like so strange to think that like looking like at the time like the people that program pulled, we were all, or the majority of that group, we were all queer. We were all queer kids. But at the time, this was like I was in high school from like 2003 to 2007. It was the context of being like a predominantly Latino city in Texas. It was not cool to be gay. It was actually really dangerous to be gay. So like it's kind of tragic for me to think like back a little bit at that time, and like how we all like had this huge part of our lives that we had in common, and we couldn't talk about it amongst us.
So you couldn't even talk about it with each other?
No, I think only one of my friends in the time that I was in high school with them ever came out as like bisexual. Wow. And I was like shook. But then also wanted to distance myself from it. Wow. Because I just was like afraid as well. I was afraid of the proximity to that because I knew that I was also part of the community deep down, and just like wanted to stay as far from it as possible.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a trip to
Texas
think about that.
Texas can be a hard place.
Yeah. I honestly, the entire time that I lived in Texas, because I went to college in San Francisco and in Modesto, a weird city in Central California. For the first 2 years of college, I tried to make a life over there. At the time, like I knew that I needed to get out of Texas when I was 18, and so I just did it in a way that I could, but very like without resources or and I had to come back after those 2 years. I came back to Laredo, and so then lived again from like 19 till like 23 again in Texas. And that entire time that I was there, I pretended to be like a straight cis woman for my safety and for my survival with like my family and like the community that I was with at the time. And it wasn't until I came to California. So sometimes when I know a lot of like very like native like folks from LA don't like folks coming into into LA, like these like
they're protective of what their neighborhoods.
I absolutely understand,
especially in some areas. The
gentrification and everything. But I literally feel like an asylum seeker in some ways. Like I sought refuge in a city like this where I could like be myself. And
do you feel like you've accomplished that?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. I mean, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. No, it's been like a more of like a rebirth. Like this is like maybe the first time since shutdown that I do like any like an interview or like a talk with anybody. Because in that time it was when I really focused on becoming myself. And when you met me, I was a different person, looked completely different, sounded completely different too. Like this is going to be my first recorded material that has the voice as I currently have it now, being nearly 9 months on testosterone too.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about that a little bit then, and explain a little bit to the listeners about your process, and
for sure, yeah.
maybe go back to when you realized that you were not. I mean, you already told us a little bit that you were already being something that you weren't.
Yeah.
Right. So, how did that process start, and how did that? If you can somehow tie it into how it affected your art, because I know that your art has so much to do with your everyday life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's see. Just share with us some of that.
Yeah. Oh man, it's definitely. I think that like my artwork and me making art like saved my life in so many ways, and just has like revealed things about me and given me courage to do things, to become myself. But I think that yeah, like I doing that performance, I wore the shirt every day, an immigrant shirt that I found on the border.
So that was a project that you called 365 days in an immigrant shirt.
Yeah.
And you wore the same shirt for an entire year as it tattered away little by little and turned into threads. But every single day you wore this shirt, even as it started to turn into pieces of threads hanging.
Yeah. So I it was a shirt that I found like on the Ocotillo Desert, like in the like right where folks cross, and they built emergency water stations for incoming migrants, or for people that are in the area, that just happen to be in the area and are in an emergency circumstance and need water. I found a shirt while volunteering with them, and this was like something I was doing while I was in grad school, and I took the shirt home and I decided to wear it as part of a performance, and it was just going to be for 30 days and then 6 months, and then I wore it to like shreds until it was completed a full like solar cycle. And the shirt had like a lot of sun damage, so it was like, it, like you said, just turned to shreds with just like my movement and existing in it for these many days. And so that's when I realized that like I was deeply trying to separate my life from my art. At the time, like I was in so much conflict because my life is messy, and for me, I thought that like art was more sacred and less messy and like powerful, and then also just like I was doing a really big political act, and existing like as like a person with light skin, and that now has documents. Like there was things that complicated me speaking about these subjects, even though my parents weren't documented for most of their lives, and lived in the U.S. for like that, undocumented, as well as my siblings. So it was complicated. There was just like a lot of like layers to it, and I was deeply trying to like, this is that, and my life is separate. But at some point, I had to just like cave in and call both, like merge the two. That call that actually like what I'm doing and my everyday life, and the political things and the messiness and the political climate is all of that is the art. Like there's no need to separate it. And so something that I experienced that while wearing the shirt is that I didn't have to think about just like every day, like picking out an outfit, like like fits every day, and that liberated a lot of time. And then also I just very much isolated that year in to preserve my energy. I mean, I was still active in the things that I needed to, but not extremely social, and spent a lot of time in quiet stillness. And so I had to address like these like demons that were that I was gay, that I like at the time when I started the project, I was 24 until I was 25, and yeah, I hadn't told like a single soul like that in all those years. I hadn't told anybody, not even like the history teacher, like the art teacher. You tell somebody when you're young or something. Kids always come out to me too, but I didn't tell anybody until that project, and I was living with my sister, and I told her like, I finally like just like blurted it out in tears and stuff, and I feel like it was that project that helped me do that. And then just coming out of that, realizing that like everything that my life was still art, that even though that piece kind of finished at some point, because I still
How many days into that did you talk to your sister?
I can't remember. I have it like documented somewhere because I wrote a lot of like journal entries and notes, and I took pictures like every day. Yeah. But it was pretty deep in the piece, like I would say like around in the 200 range for sure, that I talked to her about it. Yeah.
It's kind of like as that shredded, like, also layers of things shredded away and allowed you to open up.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So many layers for sure.
Yeah. Wow. That's a cool story. So now your life and your art are intertwined like completely. And now you've shared this with your sister. Does that change into your next projects, what you do, or?
Yeah, it does. Especially the project that I did kind of right after what that was like this embroidery project where I started to actually try to live my life like and have like my first relationship ever in my life. Like I didn't even date men really, like when I was closeted. And I didn't have my first relationship until I was 25, 26. And yeah, like super late bloomer in a lot of things in my life. And so I just started to have like queer like experiences and getting to know other queer people, and then had my first like breakup, and it was devastating for me that like
so much comes out from breakups.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, I wish there was like another way we learned.
That's funny.
But it's like
I should have learned a lot by now then.
Oh my God, honestly, still. But yeah, like I had a breakup and I couldn't tell my mom about it, so I started to embroider with these like pieces of fabric that my grandma had given me. Just like tell her like kind of what was happening, like all the drama, like all the messy stuff, and just like embroidered it. Just it's really raw, like nothing was like planned out, like the way that I decided to embroider the words.
Wow.
And so I had like I did a bunch of pieces on like just a lot of everyday objects like pillowcases, bath towels, handkerchiefs, with like curtains, like just a lot of these things. And so that piece, like I feel like all my like kind of big bodies of work have helped me just like kind of come closer to me, because that led to something else and to like another project that like eventually towards actually the end of 2020 that I came out as like trans and non-binary, and at the beginning of 2021 I officially like changed my name. I started to go by Salvador right at the beginning of 2021. And I feel like that was all kind of because of my art that helped me get there.
Wow. How was that I don't even know how to like. I don't even know what question to like try to put out with that. You know,
Yeah.
it's like I wish I wish I could understand. You know, it's weird to say things like that. Like, how did you feel, or you know, things like that. But if you could, I don't know, if you could take us through a little bit through your journey of like, you know, deciding that you were going to do it, and why you finally did it, and then
Yeah.
the outcome. How do you feel?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what really like motivated me or like was or just gave me some courage to hide first behind like calling things that I wanted to experiment with, calling it like it's for an art piece, and still like trying to like it's not like separated a little bit, like I'm just experimenting, exploring, like I don't know what's happening yet, with like a piece that I started in 2019, that at the time I titled Siempre Era Él, and that was me trying to recreate like these images of my father, like a specific like passport image that I like loved his mustache. He just has like a beautiful like shaved mustache that I've like admired since I was a young kid, and just like was fascinated by like my dad's like images like of him working and living in Chicago. That's like another place that my parents lived. They lived in Pilsen, a neighborhood, Latino neighborhood in Chicago for my dad a little bit longer, a couple more years than my mom, and my mom like about 2 years. And so they had like my dad had these like amazing photographs that he took during his time there, like these beautiful Polaroids, and I was just like intrigued by them and like wanted to like know how my parents were like at the time and what they were thinking, and like the fashion, like the clothes were so
I'm guessing this was like late 70s, early 80s, maybe.
Yeah. It
My
was,
mom and dad have the same kind of Polaroids. Like
God.
every bar they went to, or like dinner at a restaurant, there was always somebody like selling Polaroids if you wanted one. That's why a lot of those nights were documented like that.
Polaroid.
Yeah.
It was around that time, and like for years, like I had always like drawn those images, like I don't know, just made watercolor little paintings of like my dad, until I decided like that I wanted to do kind of a piece with like in reference and in conversation with two artists that I super love, Carly Fernandez and Ana Mendieta. And Ana Mendieta has this piece that she calls Transplanted, that she did, I think, when she was still in grad school, with a friend that had like a mustache and a beard, and he transplanted his beard onto her.
Wow.
Like perfect. It was like seamless.
Wow.
And they documented it in these photographs, these really beautiful photographs.
Wow.
And a photograph of two photographs that I was fortunate enough to be in a LACMA exhibition with Carly Fernandez. They faced each other, my 365 days piece, with those photographs of Carly Fernandez, of her recreating a photo of dressed up as her dad.
Wow.
And like we shared that space, like those photographs like looked directly in front of my piece for an entire year. And so I always like was really intrigued by them, and like wanted to like make a piece like with those two things in mind. Like I wanted to make a mustache on myself and then also dress like my dad. And so at the time when I was first thinking about it, I was thinking I have a really good friend that I've made art with for years. My friend William Camargo. And he has really cool mustache too.
He does.
And I was like, like we could kind of do it like Anna, like you could give me your mustache and I'll transplant it. But then during that time, I still had really long hair. Like I would always have it like up in a ponytail. So I was like, actually just come over to my studio apartment and help me document it. And I'll just cut it from my own like ponytail, like just cut it and glue it and recreate that exact mustache as my dad.
And I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's like it's a lot of work that I think honestly I haven't shared.
Yeah.
It's it's all still kind of like in process, like because I feel like I started that piece and I titled it at the time Siempre Era Él, thinking that I have a complicated relationship with my father, and we can't we're very similar in a lot of ways, and he can't really see me because it's the parts of him that he's afraid of. So we always have there's a lot of distance between us. But I know that I am him. I look like him. Like when I was recreating these photos, I look very similar to him. I navigate like him in a lot of ways. And like he raised me. And so I thought I've always been that title, Siempre Era Él. I've always been him. And I did give an artist talk in early 2020 at Cal State Fullerton about just like my art, and I included that as like more like what I'm working on. And at the time, it was the first time that I had ever said the title out loud, like Siempre Era Él. And then I was like, oh.
Saying those words.
Yeah, I said it like out loud because I had just been like typing it like on Instagram or like typing it on my computer. And then for the first time, like vocalizing it, I was like, shit, that's what we call like in a lot of trans community or like non-binary community, gender non-conforming people call like the egg was cracking. Like I was just getting like glimpses into like realizing and really coming to terms that like I'm trans too. And yeah.
That was a moment for you yourself that you were like,
yeah, that I like
I'm
consciously
here. Yeah.
like connected because like
I get it all.
Yeah. There's been other like the egg was cracking, had been cracking
of course,
my entire life, and looking back, I'm like, oh, there was that, and there's that.
But it all kind of shatters together or cracks to reveal.
Yeah, who I am.
Yeah.
But that's when I made like a conscious like thought, like, oh, there's something else happening. It's not just like this connection with my dad.
And so that's something that, I mean, I can only imagine, of course, that is like a force or something that drives you. And then now you just got to take the next step because there's no other option or, you know, how does that move you to the next step or how was that for you to decide? Like, I mean, it's one thing to feel it and it's another thing to actually say.
Like act upon it and like.
To take action. Yeah.
Well, I just like, I want it like ever since like I came out, like it was like I had spent 25 years in the closet and a life that was in my own and trying to just do things to please my family and like keep the peace, not rock the boat, just the way like I was raised, especially raised as like somebody that I was like socialized as like a woman. Like we care for folks. We're we're support for other people, but we don't rock the boat and we don't stir the pot. We don't cause drama in my family. And so, but then like when I just finally came out, I was like, enough. Like I just like I cannot, like, it's actually like,
that's beautiful.
Just like so much more exhausting, like, and to lie, not lie, but just to like not live your own life. And it's just a pain that I wasn't willing to endure anymore. Like it was like, honestly, it's also just like a survival thing. Like I could not, when I was younger, like I would always say like I had Peter Pan syndrome. Like I always wanted to stay young. But I think, honestly, I would say that because I couldn't picture myself growing up. Like, I couldn't picture, like, what I would look like growing up, or, like, where I would fit in. Other than, like, this narrative, whatever, that I was, like, supposed to follow, like, get married, have a husband, have family. Like, I understood that, but I couldn't see myself doing that. And yeah, like I just needed to, in order to survive, and to like exist in the world, I needed to like live my life, and be like, be true to myself, even if that mattered, like, even if that meant just like having, that it was going to be really difficult. It was going to be really, really difficult, but it was much more difficult to like keep it with me. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and that makes it, like, I guess, understandable. You know, it's like, well, you're in pain either way. You know, I mean, it's
either way is painful.
And then to choose your path is it's just good for you. I mean, it's your path. So
yeah, it's good for me, and it's like in a way selfish, but it's honestly good for my whole family and like everybody around me that gets to witness to, and gets like to witness that you can change and like you can become yourself and you can live your life. Even if my family doesn't, or people around me don't understand it, they just me existing and like, and people being able to witness that, like, it's good for like, it's good for everybody. Yeah.
Everybody around you, including us.
Yeah.
Definitely. How has transitioning, like, or have you started any new work since transitioning, or how has that changed your work in any way? Yeah.
So much has like happened too. Like, I feel like I'm still working on that piece, Siempre Era Él. Very, very slowly, especially because of being in shutdown and the pandemic. And, like, I'm not in any, like, rush necessarily yet to, like, show it at this moment, like, those pieces and, like, a show. Or I do have plans and I have goals. I would like for that to happen at some point. But I've been working at it really slow. So just, photographing. I was finally able to recreate those photographs of my dad. I wanted to travel to Chicago. Wow. And recreate those photos of my dad.
Seriously, in the same spot where he was at?
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
I was so, like, it's one of the favorite things I've done of my pieces, just because, like, the Polaroid was, like, glued or something with this, like, hard backing that was able to be, like, a like a postcard initially. And so this was like, some of these photographs existed like before my parents were married, when they were still dating, and my dad would mail the image, like the photos of himself, like looking all like guapo or whatever. with his like coolest like fits.
Yeah, that's awesome.
To my mom.
The full trajes, right? When they had
Yeah.
like the pants and the coat that matched with the little cowboy
Yeah.
things, I imagine.
Yeah, these really beautiful outfits. And I mean, I wanted to also like that was part of it for me too, to like scavenge and look for the clothing like that I could wear. And the back of the postcard has an address. It's like 19th Street in Pilsen in Chicago. And so with Google Maps, I was able to like go back to that exact same spot, like without even physically traveling there, because I wanted to do this trip April 2020. And then
got shut off.
Yeah, I got no way that was going to happen. But I traveled there through Google Maps and saw like that same location.
Did you go back in the years too? Because you can do that too.
Really?
Yeah, you can go to that at Google Maps and then find the year and go backwards, and it'll go back to the earliest year that they did it.
Oh shit! No, I never even thought about doing that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I'm gonna do that when I get home. I know. I mean, and a lot of it had changed. Like it didn't, because then eventually, like fast forward to summer 2021, I traveled to Chicago, and I went back to the exact location and walked around, and it was hard to like pinpoint like where he was standing and so on and so forth, just because like it's a neighborhood that has been really impacted by gentrification and has changed a lot. And so things like the facades of houses changed, but I was able to talk to like a señora that like was there, and I showed her the photo and I told her it was my dad, and she was like, oh, like allá por esa casa, like I creo que allá la vi and stuff, and like with her help, like I chatted it up with her. Yeah. I love chatting with señoras. I'm an old soul. They like helped me like kind of find the place. That's and two of my friends, William Camargo being one of them, he traveled with me. He lived in Chicago for many years, so he knew the area very well, and we just kind of like recreated the pose and like tried to like get into like what the mentality was, like my dad was thinking at the time, for his body, like the body language, like everything. Like we even noticed like in the Polaroid that he wasn't wearing shoes, and there was footprints. So we made a whole story. We like generated this whole story that we believe is pretty accurate. That was like
forensic artist.
Yeah, because first off, like he was wearing it. I don't have this relationship with my dad that I could ask him, so I had to just like generate it like through that. And he was wearing a white shirt and shorts and like a fedora hat. So it must have been a warm month in Chicago, like summer, enough to be wearing that clothes. And he wasn't wearing shoes, but it was like there was footprints walking up to the sidewalk, like on the sidewalk walking into like a fence, or he turned around and like posed. And so we thought like, oh, there must have been like what are those called? The fire hydrants, like that people open to cool down, because it gets like really hot and humid in the summers in Chicago. And they keep probably like cooling off with those like homies or whatever, and like he didn't even have shoes on, and then like must have like just like told like a friend like, oh, like aquí mero, like this spot, take it.
That's perfect.
So we tried to just do a little. I went in April. I went in June actually, and it was raining. The conditions weren't like exactly the same, but I still tried to do some of the poses and actions and thoughts that we created. Yeah,
I love how you immerse yourself and like everything that you do.
Yeah.
It's like completely becomes you. Even the shirt, the 365-day shirt became you.
Yeah.
You guys became one together. It's just and then your drawings with your stories that you do also, like it's all so much you sharing yourself, which is just awesome, I guess. It's like it's really cool to be able to do that and to share it and to tell and to not be afraid to express.
Yeah.
Wow. So when this work is done, you hope that you have a place for it that is showing already, or
no? I haven't shown any of those works or like other like more developments or pieces that I've like that are contributing. I still want to do like I want to travel to Texas and recreate some of my childhood like my family photos with like the thinking with the idea that I was like lived as a boy, because I kind of did, like I kind of lived like a little boy when I was really young. My parents let me have like mushroom hair, like well everybody had like this mushroom haircut like in the 90s, and then I just kind of dressed like a little boy and like played soccer and like was obsessed with like hanging out with my brothers. Didn't want to do any girly things, and so I kind of had that life, but then like there would be moments where I was like forced to be like act like a girl for like public things like bautizos, quinceañeras, go to church, like had to wear dresses and stuff. But I wanted to take these like retake these photographs of my childhood in Texas, but like legit like a little boy, where where like I like swimming in a river. We used to swim in a city called Uvalde in Texas, and that had like this 2-piece bathing suit that didn't make any sense. Like I was like a child that like around like 6 or 7. I was like, the 2-piece wasn't necessary, so I just like kind of want to recreate those photos, like just wearing shorts and like the same pose that I had as a kid. Like I had this pose like around like flexing like muscles.
Nice. That's perfect.
And so I still want to do some of these pieces that require a little bit of travel, and so I don't have a location or anything, but I have ideas. Like I wanted to make it into a zine. I did also like a zine, like an artist book for 365 days in immigrant shirt.
I remember that.
And I love that. I got so immersed in like seeing culture, and I like teach my students about making zines, and so like I want to make a zine about like these like I wanted to have like a more of like a fine art gallery presence, but then also something that could be in the culture of like seeing culture, and like it's just something more accessible too. So that's kind of what the vision for that is.
So going back to Texas, now that you mentioned Texas again and your youth, I remember that we didn't get into that you also went to Texas A&M.
I did.
But you mentioned you went to school in San Francisco. So what was like your college trajectory?
Yeah, that was like, I was a hot mess like during that time, like just like, because I didn't have the guidance, like I had an older brother that was in college too, but like he also kind of like he also went to art school and was like bouncing around kind of what I did too until like he figured it out. He ended up graduating from Art Center in Pasadena.
Oh, nice.
And so I was like, I guess I have to do kind of something like that. And went to school in San Francisco for a year. Like I went to a school that no longer exists. It's called San Francisco Art Institute, or like folks know it as like SFAI. It's a pretty old art school that like I think went bankrupt. And I went there for a year, but I just didn't have the support to sustain me there, because it was first off, like, extremely expensive. Like, I got in, like, took out a massive loan. Even though I had, like, a pretty, like, amazing scholarship for most of the tuition, but even, like, living in San Francisco in 2008 was so expensive. I can't even imagine now. Like, I can't even travel to San Francisco. It's way too expensive to go. And to, like, it was expensive at that time to, like have a dorm. And, like, I just didn't, my whole life I was always around everybody speaking Spanish. Like, my friends in high school, at home, like, we would just code switch on and off, like, just Spanish, English, and like Spanglish, that's, like, my dominant tongue. And when I went to San Francisco, like, I didn't really know, there was, like, 2-3 other Latinos in that school. Like, it was predominantly white, and I just, I couldn't find a place for myself there. And then I was just getting really scared of these, like, student loans, and so I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy, like, at that school. I had, like, all my professors were, like, white older men that didn't understand me. Like, I remember making a piece about, like, Dia de los Muertos, in like the end of my freshman year at, where I did, like, this entire installation.
Coco, so they didn't know anything about it. So.
I don't know what they would think now, or, like, how that would go now. I think it would be completely different. But at the time, I did my piece where I did this, like, whole, like, elaborate installation of, like, an altar to my grandmother, and I was taking a screen printing class, and I made my own altar candles that were so cool, like, and then I had my critique, and my professor and other people in the class, like, you know, like, have you ever been in a critique where, like, one person will start it off one way, and that's kind of just, like, where the whole conversation, like, like, dominates. And so, like, really early on, a white student man was like, oh, like, yeah, like, this is gorgeous, like, this is so beautiful, but, like, it's not art. Like, it's, like, a culture thing. It like, just like a cultural tradition. It isn't art. And then everybody was like, yeah, like, no, it's not art. Everybody agreed with him, and I was like, what the?
Wow. So were you allowed to counter, or?
I didn't have the language to defend myself.
I understand completely.
Yeah. And I didn't, honestly, I thought it might have been a waste of time to energy, because I knew that if they didn't understand, like, that, like, there was no way they were going to understand more if I got deeper with it.
And it's not something that you could solve for them in a 5-minute.
And the critique. Yeah.
Wow.
And
then you ended up at Texas A&M.
So actually then I did a year community college in Modesto, and then that was a horrible place to live.
Wow, I thought it was going to be a nice place, but
it was better than San Francisco, but, like, it was very traditional, like, it just like, very, like, a Republican,
I see.
And so I was, like, too scared to live there. And worse, I think, in some ways, than Texas. Because in Texas, at least, there was, like, Latino, like, a little bit more, like, just there was Latinos, much more Latinos, even though, there was Latinos and a lot of different races in Modesto. It was just, like, I just didn't feel safe there. And so I ended up going back to Texas. I was just like, I'm just going to go, like, home, and so I don't have to, like, worry about rent while I'm trying to finish college, because I always I like, the entire time, like, that I was in school, I always worked. I always had, like, 2-3 jobs, like, part-times, like, while I was studying.
You had to if you were living in San Francisco. So.
Oh my God. Yeah. yeah. Especially then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to talk about, or any thoughts that you have that you want to finish?
Yeah, I guess I would also just like preface in saying that like the journey that I talked about with like my transness and like the egg shattering and like how my art led to like me getting there, it was like just like is not like a general like overarching story for trans people, that like there's many different like narratives and many different ways that people like come out or not come out and live their life as trans people, but that is like just like my personal journey with it. And I mean, it's still unfolding. I'm like still in like always in the becoming, and just kind of excited where that takes my art, or vice versa, where my identity or like my life takes takes my art, or the other way around.
It brings up the question to me, like, so like as you transition, do you see, like, I hadn't even thought of this yet, but do you see like an actual like finish line, or is it something that you like constantly will transition for the rest of your life?
There's like, I think, it's just like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this, like,
and I'm sure that is different for everybody as well.
Absolutely. And like when coming out to like some like family and stuff, like, and one of the things that told me is like that I'm always something different. Like it's like hard for like my like some of my family to understand like that I'm now trans, because a couple of years ago I said that I was gay. A couple of years ago I said that I was like a lesbian. A couple of years ago I was like straight. So they're like, now it's this, you know? And it's like, because that's what that's what I think being alive is like, and being on Earth is like constantly like in cycles and changing, and so there. I know. I guess the answer to that is there isn't a finish line.
It's a journey.
It's a journey, because then I'll transition in like a different way too. Like when I finally when I leave the earthly realm, and then
the final transition.
I'll transition.
Or is it?
We'll keep transitioning.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I love to think that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's beautiful.
We just keep transitioning. I mean, because we don't die. No one ever really dies. Turn into something else that floats into something else somewhere else is my belief, I guess.
Yeah, I like to think that too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Really appreciate you sharing with us like deeply, and being so open about your experience. And I mean, it really helps a lot of us understand a lot of you know, these kinds of processes, and understand the people that are experiencing this. So what else can I tell you? But thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have you don't have a website, but let's tell people your Instagram.
So I have 2 Instagram accounts. One of them is a public one, because I tattoo as well. And so I have a tattoo account, and that one's called salvavida.tattoos. And that one's just strictly dedicated to that work. And then my personal one at the moment is a private account. It's called S, and then a couple underscores. I can't remember. I think it's like 3 underscores de la Torre. And that one it's like my actual life and art, and like all mixed in there, and tattooing. Everything goes in there, and nothing is like curated or filtered.
I think that's the one I'm following. I didn't know you had another tattoo one, so I'll be sure to follow that too.
Yeah, I have another one.
Oh, very good. And there's a question that we ask at the end of every podcast. I don't know if you've heard this before. And it's a vague question, but the challenge is to answer in one sentence if you can. Okay. And your answer can be as vague as the question is, so it doesn't matter. But Salvador de la Torre, how do you do it?
Con muchas ganas.
Muchas ganas. And that's where we'll leave it at. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and your time, and we'll see you guys next week.